Hey, welcome to Mike the Baptist. Week after Easter already. Where's the time going?
Flies by.
Yep, just want to get that out there. Stuff you knew already, but it's refreshing to hear things to reaffirm your beliefs at times, I guess. We know that's reaffirm. It's kind of a churchy word. The buzzer has been taking a back seat in recent episodes. We've just kind of forget about it, and I want to make sure that we keep the buzzer alive, because
Here at Mike the Baptist, we get buzzed.
we get buzzed. Yes, I've been thinking about, you've said for a long time we need a shirt or something that says, I got buzzed on Mike the Baptist. No, we're about to do that. That's about to become available. It'd be interesting to see who buys those. You know who it's going to be? All the seniors at my church are going to show up at church one day with, I got buzzed, which I find hilarious. Hey, welcome to Mike the Baptist. I'm Mike the Baptist. You're H.D. Jones across the table from me.
Sure am.
Good to have you here. And Neil Andrews is here. Good to have both of you here.
Thank you.
Had a spirited couple of weeks with you guys, and I'm expecting another one today. I don't think I'll be disappointed. The buzzer is here. If we get too spiritual, we want to bring it back down into common language. That was the purpose of Mike the Baptist to begin with. And we have not gotten out of hand, but I have gotten a little lax on using the buzzer. But I'm going to try to recommit to you guys today that I'm going to bring you down if you get too far up there. I'm also going to use it because Neil gets so comfortable here at the Red Oak Studios that as the programs go on, he settles back into these chairs. When I got MTB going, I wanted to have four, comfortable chairs. I didn't want hard chairs that you sit in, and I wanted comfortable chairs. And I didn't foresee what was going to happen, though, is because as you go on, you kind of get into these chairs. And we turned the recline off of Neil's.
Thank you.
To help him keep from doing that. He's also put a pillow behind him today to keep himself from leaning back. But now I also have the buzzer, and I may use the buzzer, Neil. If you get too far away from the mic, I may buzz you back
forward.
in. Yeah, bring you back in.
This is one of the things in television production they teach you not to use chairs that do this.
Oh, to swivel and recline.
Right.
And yeah.
Because unknowingly people will do that.
Have you noticed on, I watch quite a few news programs, and I have noticed that in broadcast school, obviously they aren't teaching the men this, but the women, they're all teaching to keep their backbone really straight and rigid. And so a lot of them look really unnatural sitting up there like that. But the old boys, they're still slouching, got their knees 4 feet apart on the couch and their elbows on them. I've noticed that about.
Be comfortable.
Yeah, be comfortable. Loosen up. Watch Mike the Baptist. It ain't about posture here.
No, it's about being loose.
www.mikethebaptist.com. Go visit. It's a website. That's what you do. You type it in your smartphones and computers and you visit. Email, comments at mikethebaptist.com. Keep sending those cards and letters. We'll check the email someday. If I can remember to check the email, we'll check it.
Buy some stuff.
Buy some stuff. Thank you, H. Buy some merchandise. It helps pay the light bill.
Mm-hmm.
So I just noticed those don't need to be on. We'll save a few pennies if I turn those right there off, the new ones. Anyway, so we just had a brief discussion about, I'd asked Neil, do you like the new shorter format? And my friend HD said, we haven't done it shorter yet. We're still working on that. But so we're going to move right into the Front Porch visit. And we're going to try to streamline this episode the best we can. How's that? Mm-hmm. All right, wish us luck. Today on the Front Porch, we're going to talk about theme parks. It was brought up that we all might have a story or two about theme parks, and I thought, that's kind of nice. I think we might. I'll start. I'm from Northwest Arkansas. There was a comic strip a long time ago called Little Abner, and there was a fictitious town in Little Abner called Dogpatch, USA. And Little Abner was a character. Daisy Mae was like his girlfriend in there, and there was some colonel or something. It was a bunch of Ozarkians. Is basically
where Daisy Dukes came from.
Daisy Dukes was different, but they dressed similar.
Okay.
Sort of. You'd have to look it up. Just look up Dog Patch USA. So 40 miles from my hometown, near the town of Harrison and Jasper, Arkansas, up in that area, they actually developed a theme park called Dog Patch USA. I think it was on 50 acres. Johnny Morris, Bass Pro Shop fella, has recently bought that property because it sat dormant for a long time. But he's recently bought that and is going to dump billions of dollars in there to build something. So I'm anxious to see what happens. But when I was a kid, we would go to Dog Patch. Like if we had family visiting from out of town, but it was part of what you did is you went and spent the day at Dog Patch. They had rides, amusement parks. They had trout fishing streams, and a lot of Ozarkian type things. Had these odd little character statues all through the park, these cement statues of the cartoon characters. And then they had live Little Abners and Daisy Mays running all over the place. And they would do skits all over the park. You had to ride this tram that was on a really steep, kind of like in Chattanooga. If you ever go to Chattanooga, they've got that tram that goes up. They had one of those at Dog Patch, where you parked up on top of a hill, but you had to get on that tram. I can remember as a kid being terrified, what if that cable breaks? Because it felt in those days like it was straight down. But you would go down there and then spend the day kind of roaming around. When I was I think I had graduated high school maybe. But a fella from Florida, New Smyrna Beach, Florida, named Henry Gerson, he's one of the famous airbrush artists from back in the 60s, 70s, did a lot of bands, murals, and all that stuff. He drew a lot of those Rat Rod. You remember the Rat Rod cartoons? Yeah. He was one of those guys that
Big
drew
Daddy
those.
Roth.
Yeah, he drew that kind of stuff. But anyway, he would come into my hometown. He did some work for a guy that owned a record service there named Ira Parks. And he had painted a mural on one of Ira's records one time. I don't know where Ira met him, but somehow or another they developed this friendship, and he would let Gerson come to his record shop area and park his motorhome and stay for a week or a month at a time, and then people from all over the area would come and have Henry paint these airbrush scenes on their tailgates and their cars. He just made a bloody fortune there in a few weeks, and then he'd pack up and move on. Well, I got to befriend Henry because I was the local artist guy. So I would hang around Henry, and I eventually learned to airbrush. So one year, in my early entrepreneurial efforts, I went to Dog Patch and said, I do airbrush. Maybe I could paint some shirts. So they let me come up there and set up an airbrush T-shirt. Looking back, I was not that good at airbrush at the time, but a lot of kind people came through and let me paint T-shirts for them and all that. But that was Dog Patch. The only other theme park story I have is I owned for years one of the airplanes from the Barnstormer ride at Opryland. I did some creative work for this young couple of guys in Nashville a lot of years ago, and I think they owed me $700 when it was all done, and only after I finished it all for them did they tell me they really didn't have cash to pay me. And they didn't know when they were going to get paid for doing what I had done for them. So long story short, one of them said, "Can we trade you something?" And I made the mistake of saying, "What?" And one of them said, "Well, I've got this airplane that was on the Barnstormer ride in Opryland." Of course, me, oh, well, that's interesting. So in my backyard for years was one of the Barnstormer planes. My kids grew up playing on it. We hauled it to Arkansas once to do a mission thing, and they used it for a vacation Bible school.
Did it for VBS at Temple.
Did it for VBS here in our hometown, had an airplane.
Is that the one that was hanging from the ceiling in the sanctuary?
No. This one was...
It was pretty heavy. It was fiberglass.
Yeah, it was very heavy. And I didn't even have the wings. They never produced the wings, but if with the wings, it would have killed many people if it had fallen on you. But anyway, so I had that. It was kind of neat, and I did not realize how neat it was until I found this Facebook site group about Opryland. There's actually a few of them. Thousands of people are on there all the time talking about their memories of and the Barnstormer. So I put a note on there one time about having one of these, and I was flooded with people asking about that. I wound up selling it for $3,500 to somebody.
There you go.
Because my kids never used it, and it was just rotting out here in the backyard. I believe that plane now is in on the Jamestown, Tennessee, on the other side of Knoxville, Jamestown or Jamesville or something. A guy was building a factory restaurant complex or something over there, and he came and bought it, and he was going to hang that, suspend it from the ceiling in that complex that he was building. So I haven't been over there to see it, but anyway, just
Very cool.
interesting, strange facts.
That's cool.
HD, do you have a theme park
So
story?
Opryland, that was obviously here in Nashville. Grew up going out there and just had a lot of fun. Back in the day, you know, Mom would just drop us off. I look back and think I would never just drop my kids off anywhere like that, but they would. They'd drop us off and we'd go hang out at Opryland for a while. So one of my favorite stories, though, at Opryland was I was a sweeper. One day I was a sweeper. So Mom had temporary help business, and they were looking for people to go over there, and couldn't find people. And I was like, I'll go over and do this. So I mean, I went in, got my little costume, probably brown polyester pants and the brown shirt with the orange stripes on it, you know. And I was a sweeper. Well, back in the day, everybody smoked, so they were dropping cigarette butts, and I'm sweeping up cigarette butts. Well, I don't guess I was trained or knew that you needed to step on the cigarette butts before you swept them into. So I swept them into my little basket and went over there and dumped them into the trash can. Next thing I look back, the trash can, poof, it's on fire, you know. So, yeah, that was, Opryland had a lot of, and as my kids, my older kids especially, I worked in Nashville, and we'd buy season tickets, and Susan would bring the kids over and pack a dinner. We'd sit out in the parking lot and eat our peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then go walk through Opryland. So I was kind of bummed out when they closed that and put a mall over there.
A lot of people
kind of bummed out.
A lot of people were bummed out, still are. About it.
It was a great place just to walk around. They had a lot of good music and stuff, so I enjoyed being that. And so from there, you know, we go to Disney. And funny thing, been to Disneyland twice in California, twice in my life I've been out there, and both times ran into people from our church.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Go to the other side of the country and there's people you know. So
that is crazy.
Can't even get crazy out in California.
No, got to watch it everywhere you are.
Exactly. Yeah. So theme parks are fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
I would encourage you to look up the Opryland groups on Facebook. It's it's really interesting, the things that are on there. Really interesting.
One of the ladies that works with us, for some reason, she loved that Angle Inn that they used to have, and she wanted the script. And I mean, spent like months trying to track down, did anybody have a copy of the script of what they said when you went in the Angle Inn? So
hey, listen, I'm going to tell you from my airplane experience, if you have the right Opryland memorabilia, there are people out there who will fork over $10,000 to have it.
Oh, wow.
Sitting in their shelf in their house. If you have the right, I sold my plane a little cheap.
Oh, and one of my favorite stories at Opryland too. So my mom, who's never really been a farm person, even though we've lived on a farm our whole life, she takes us out there one time. And of course, now Mom like always had the big hair and high heels and Daisy Duke shorts, you know, that was Mom in the day. And we go in, there's a little petting area, and a goat peed on her foot. It was the funniest thing. A goat peed on her foot. We made fun of her all the time for that.
Your mom has these great.
Yeah.
Of course, my favorite is the belt buckle in the hair.
Yeah,
at the
you
church.
got it. Yeah.
That's such a good story.
That is a good one.
Oops, sorry, I'm bumping your camera there.
No.
Neil?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a theme park stories?
I do, but they're not quite as amusing, shall we say?
Well, you're following.
Well, it's called an amusement park.
I know. No, we used to go to. There's a place in Sandusky, Ohio, called Cedar Point, and Cedar Point was the most. They had the largest and fastest roller coasters in the world for a number of years. But my favorite one, they had all those really advanced things that would go upside down, and the ones that you could stand up in.
Ooh.
But the wooden coaster is my favorite. And it's called the Blue Streak. And I used to ride, I'd ride in the front car or the back car, because the back car, when you're going down the hill, it gets the whip, you know, because lifts
Ooh.
up and you go down. So I loved that. They had another one called the Gemini, and it was a wooden coaster, but one of the trains was backward. So it would get to the end of the track. You're either on the whole train is backward, and then the other one that's right beside it's going forward. You get to the end of the track, and then it starts over again, and then you're forward if you were backward. So
What was it called?
the Gemini,
No, I mean the park.
Cedar Point,
Cedar Point. And this was
still
outside
there.
of...
Sandusky, Ohio. It's up on the lake. Oops.
Still in business.
Oh yeah,
Huh.
yeah. They may still have. I don't remember. They've still probably got either the fastest or the highest coaster in the world. But that was my amusement park. We go there every summer.
So I like those rides, but I can't really do them.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
I
Well,
remember.
yeah.
And there's a physiological reason for that. There's liquid in your ears.
Oh, yes. I can
and
tell
it
you all about
starts
that.
not being as liquid,
Yep.
and your balance doesn't work like it did before.
I have benign proximal positional vertigo. And what that means is in your inner ear, there's this U shape at the bottom of the ear canals, and there are these crystals that are suspended in liquid in there. So it's like a level in construction. As your head tilts, these things also go with the flow and keep your mind from freaking out that your whole system is out of whack. So it keeps your perspective. When you have what I have, those crystals at times go a little too far up one side of that, and they kind of dump over into this other area. So what you wind up with is you're just dizzy all the time. I've been dizzy for 10 or 12 years, constantly.
That explains some things.
It explains a lot. I'm more used to it than I used to be, but it was awful. There are exercises you can do where you have to stand on your head and to get them back in line, but that doesn't work well in grocery stores, as I found out in Lynch, Kentucky one time. It doesn't translate well. But anyway, so I like those rides like that. But if I do one of those, I can do it and it's fun, but it'll ruin several hours of my life afterwards. Just absolutely ruin it.
I do remember the first time that happened to me because I was taking my sons. It was Disney. It was at Disneyland, and it was the teacups.
Oh, yeah.
And I got on there
spinning
with one of my sons got on there, and he was just doing it. So I'm helping him go, and we're going fast, spinning around. And the ride stops, and he gets off and runs out to Mom. And I got off, and I could not stand up. I thought I was going to lose everything.
Yeah, I've been on one of those
Yeah.
before in years past. Make you nuts.
Enjoy it while you're young. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, because things change. Yeah, your balance changes somewhat.
There is there's YouTube sites that you can go on, and they have these parks that have been closed, and these guys go in behind the scenes and they video stuff. It's pretty cool. I bet there's somebody that's gone to Dog Patch.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it was a pretty busy place back in its day. Silver Dollar City, I forgot to mention, nearby in Branson, Missouri. We grew up going to Silver Dollar City all the time. One of my cousins had an uncle that worked there. He would rob you on the train when the train drove out in the woods. He was one of the robbers. But I guess everybody knows that Dollywood was a Silver Dollar City,
Right.
part of that chain. And she just bought it, changed the name, and added a lot of butterflies. But it's basically the same sound and smell of steam trains and stuff cooking. It's basically the same kind of feel as Silver Dollar City. Although I did go to Silver Dollar City a few years ago. We took a trip out there for about a week in that area, and it's so much different because it still has a very mountain feel to that park. Very, they're making lye soap and stuff. Very, very mountain feel. But anyway,
Dolly
interesting.
was the first place I ever saw deep fried Twinkies.
Yeah, I've never eaten one of those, but
I
I've
haven't
seen
either.
them. Hey, look, get me a ticket to Dollywood on the day they're making those potatoes and sausage things in that big wok-looking thing up there on a hill somewhere. It's just potatoes and sausage and I think a little sesame seed and some onions. Just get me a bowl of that.
I bet you couldn't be a train robber today. You probably get shot.
They might shoot back.
Yeah,
at you.
they'd probably shoot somebody's packing.
So-
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think they robbed the train this time. They did some other little skit. I don't think they robbed it this time. Yeah, somebody would take that literal. Okay, we might visit this again sometime. I think there are more stories here to uncover about these theme parks. But, I have one about Disneyland I'd like to share at some point. Anyway, it had something to do with a classmate of mine and him smoking some dope.
That may be a different podcast.
We'll tell that all.
You're just asking for a friend.
More or less. We'll be back to talk about some serious stuff we found in the Bible.
You may have seen people wearing Mike the Baptist t-shirts or hoodies lately and wondered to yourself, hey self, where could I get some of that bling bling? Well, tell yourself not to worry, because it's easy to order Mike the Baptist logo tees and hoodies for yourself or your family and friends. Visit MikeTheBaptist.com, click on the merchandise link, and shop away. Lots of colors and sizes to pick from. And now available, I'm Just a Christian Trying Not to Cuss tees and hoodies. Mike the Baptist is all about real talk with real people, spreading the good news to a world who can really use some good news right now. When you purchase Mike the Baptist tees and hoodies, you're helping Mike and the crew pay the bills to keep Mike the Baptist on the interwebs and talking about God's love for all people. It's really that simple. And we make no apologies for having fun and living out the Christian life. Order your tees or hoodies today with just the logo or familiar sayings you hear on Mike the Baptist episodes. Just visit MikeTheBaptist.com and click on merchandise. Thanks so much for watching and listening to Mike the Baptist and for your support in helping us spread the good news. What a great planet.
So recently in D.C., I saw a Gutenberg Bible, and I was fascinated by that. Just stood there. I just kept standing there looking at that, thinking, what they did to print one of those, and then the fact that it was still around, and how important that probably was at the time. Mm-hmm. It still is. Well, we have the same words. I mean, there's Bibles scattered around here. I see one there. I see one down here. We've got them all on our phones. Got every translation you can think of in my phone of the Bible. They're everywhere. You know why? It's still a good book. It's still got a lot of meaning to it. It's probably not on Amazon's bestseller list still.
Oh, I bet it is.
You think it is?
Sure.
Be interested to know how many copies a year it still sells. But isn't that incredible? Mm. It's just a bunch of words. I suspect it's where the words come from. Maybe. And how they kind of ring true, Self-help books, they make a big splash, but then they're gone. You really don't hear about many of those anymore. But that one, you just still thousands of years, and it's still going. So this section of Mike the Baptist is where we talk about stuff that have been found in the Bible, and I'm going to let the preachers take it over and talk about that.
So in the readings this week, we engaged with Moses, and one particular thing, well, there's more than one particular thing. He had some issues, some things he struggled with that I think our book says train wrecks in there. And it's interesting to think about, I think about King David, and God saying he's a man after my own heart, even with all those issues. So what I'm wondering is, why does God put those stories in the Bible to show imperfections, and they show people having train wrecks? Why are those things still recorded in there?
Well, I think it gives validity to Scripture, because if this was a story, if I was going to write a story about me, it'd be like 99% good, and then, oh yeah, one time I stole a piece of bubble gum, right? But when you read the Bible, it really literally is the good, the bad, the ugly of people's lives, and yet the theme throughout it shows how God utilizes people in spite of their difficulties and their mistakes, and even uses them for His glory. Moses had all the things going against him when he was born because he was Jewish, and the Pharaoh was trying to kill all those baby boys, and his mama hid him, and all that stuff. But then he gets into the palace and he's educated. But then you fast forward and he's mad because he sees an Egyptian beating up on a Hebrew person and he kills this guy. Well, then he has to leave. He runs away. And he's gone for 40 years. That's the thing we miss too in some of these stories, is that, one, it's very transparent that they're not perfect, but it takes time. It takes time for God to work in our lives and kind of maybe burn some stuff out of our lives and help us get through. One of my favorite parts of Moses is he's reluctant. He's a reluctant leader. When God speaks to him in a burning bush, how many of us would be like, you know what, if God would just tell me what to do, God, send me a text on what to do, and I will do that thing tomorrow. One of the guys that goes to our church, he all the time says, I leave a piece of paper and a pencil beside my bed every night, and I tell God, if you'll just write down what you want me to do, I'll do it. And, I think, wouldn't that be cool in some ways if God sent me a text or an email? But what would we do? We'd be like, oh, that's not really from God. Who is this? Somebody playing a trick on me. But God speaks to Moses in this burning bush and tells Moses what he wants him to do very specifically. And Moses starts coming up with excuses of why he can't do it, why he really doesn't believe. God has to prove himself to Moses over and over again. And I just love that about Moses, that he's just a real dude.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody's, I'm not trying to get ahead, if somebody's listening to this that has not accepted Jesus, and you're talking about God speaking to you, how do you know when it's God speaking to you? I think that would be a good thing to kind of explore for a minute.
Yeah, Michael, how would you know?
How do you know when God talks to you?
Okay, well,
is he a baritone?
I'll tell you what I think. Of course,
You speculating?
I'm just speculating, but I speculate. I've been Christianing seriously since about 1997. And I have ran into 2 or 3 people in that amount of time who told me that God told them something. I think, without exception, all 3 or 4 of those were wrong. It turned out that whatever it was they heard and said, that God said this to me, turns out that maybe he didn't, because I can't see God telling you something and then it being wrong down the road. I can't see that. So I've developed this thought process for myself, and after watching a lot of television preachers stuff for several years, I really studied those. I didn't just study them. I just watched a lot of TV preachers. I listened to a lot of radio teachers. I soaked in a lot of that stuff for a several-year period. And what I found is there are a lot of people who like to talk about their direct connection with God and God telling them things. Mm-hmm. When I read the Bible and listen to more common sense teachers and preachers, I don't hear any of them saying God told me something directly. He did back in the scriptural days. There were instances where it's recorded that God spoke to somebody and said such and such, but I don't find any of that happening anymore. And I can't help but think, I'm not Paul. I'm not your most devoted Christian. I'm probably not the example you would give to a lot of people if you were giving them examples, but I have thought about this a lot, and I've paid a lot of attention to him over all these years, and I studied a lot of his teachings through other preachers, teachers, what have you, and my own reading. Why would he not have said something to me? If he does that, why would he not have just said something to me? I'm not saying that to doubt that if he wanted to say something to you audibly, he would. Mm-hmm. I'm not doubting that. So don't get me wrong. Don't go sending me emails saying you sacrilegious, heathen, hypocrite. I'm not saying that at all. I don't know what he's doing to you, but I'm just saying, from me and my experience, being as a devoted Christian as I know how to be, which at times is not that good, but why would he not have just said something to me and cleared all of it up? I don't believe he does that, because I believe if he did that for you or for you, you wouldn't have any use for me, or you wouldn't have any use. You wouldn't have any use for his church, or you wouldn't have any need to do all these things he asked you to do in the Bible about go love everybody else. You'd have your answers. You just direct to him, pick up the phone, and let him just tell you. I don't think he designed it that way. That's just me. Mm-hmm. But I say that that's just me from experience and observation. I'm a writer, so I observe. I always observe. And I just can't help but think, if he wanted to tell me something audibly, he would have by this point. Why would he wait?
And I think you said earlier, too, when you said God speaks,
Mm-hmm.
you have to define speaks.
Okay, I'll answer that for you, too.
Yes.
Let me tell you what I've learned that God speaking is. He wrote it all down.
Yep.
Over time, they determined these are the ones he wanted you to have. A lot of people have agreed on that. For thousands of years, people have agreed about that. Who am I, a child of the 70s, to come along and say, yeah, I don't know if all of that's correct? So the more of that thing I read and talk about with you guys and spend time with other people I know who are all talking about this, the more I learn about maybe what his thought process is. And I hear him speak to me through what he's already said.
Right.
And then through my experience of being just alive, mm-hmm. and seeing your life and hearing from other friends about their lives. And I see where the things that he talks about in there that he's already said many times, a lot of things in that Bible are repeated over and over and over, which tells me he's trying to get you a message across here. But all of that tells me that he is speaking to me if I'm paying attention to him. The people I see in our culture today, there's two things that really flag me that you might not be authentic. I would never question you about your salvation, but I would question you about your authenticity. If you tell me that God is doing this new thing, you're automatically on a list in my mind that, what new thing?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Why would he be doing a new thing when he's already given us the thing? Mm-hmm. The second is the word season. I know a lot of people use that term in Christian circles without any kind of regard for it being hurtful or insincere. But to me, God gave me one season. It's my life. That's my season. There's a song, is it the Birds? A time for this, a time for that, season for this, season for that. Mm-hmm. But when I hear people trying to teach me about God having a season for this thing happening right here, I'm very suspicious of that. Why would he tell you about a season to do this particular thing but not tell me? Why would he just tell you that? He gave us this whole Bible, which to me is one season. You're born, searching for him. You spend your life getting back to him, finding him and getting back to him. And that's the season. So all this new thing he's doing and this season for this and season for that, I don't buy into that. That's just my experience. And I mean no harm in what I'm saying, but I have to look at this in a more practical way than that. And I can't help but think sometimes the people who are advertising a new season are doing that for a reason other than what his reason is for. Okay, I'm through ranting.
No, I think you're absolutely right about that. I mean, the Bible even itself says that prophecy has been wrapped up in Christ. He is God's final revelation of himself to us. Now, that doesn't mean that God is not going to speak to us in some ways, but it's not going to be extra biblical information. I mean, the Bible is what the Bible is. And if you think, well, matter of fact, I had a guy walk into my office one day and he said, God's telling me to divorce my wife. And I just started laughing. I said, there's no way God's telling you that. The Bible says God hates divorce. So no, he's not telling you that. And the funny thing was, about 2 years earlier, he was telling me how God told me to marry her. What a wonderful lady she was and all this. And so I think when it comes to God speaking, though, we can discern things. For example, years ago at our church, I kind of had this feeling, this thought. Some of it was based on what I could see and touch and feel. We needed to go to 2 services. Parking lot starting to get full, sanctuary starting to get full. So I used my brain that God gave me to look at numbers and think through that. Mm-hmm. One of the conclusions I came up to was, I think we need to go to 2 services. But I went to the deacons and I talked to them about it, and I could tell there was some hesitancy. So I was like, okay, this isn't the right time, because if God's speaking to me, he'll be speaking to them as well. Several months go on, and a couple of the guys came up to me and they said, we're going to 2 services, aren't we? And I just smiled, because I knew God had kind of settled that in their heart. It was time to move forward. We could do that. There's a guy that wrote a book called Sharing Jesus Without Fear, and he talks about, how do I know God wants me to speak to this person or this person about salvation? Well, he said, I don't have to ask, does God want me to speak about salvation? I already know that. What I have to discern is, who am I supposed to speak to? And he said, if he was sitting in a plane between you two, he'd look at you and start talking and start trying to talk about spiritual stuff. And if you didn't want to hear anything about spiritual stuff, well, he would just know, okay, that's not the right one. And then he'd turn to the other guy and he'd start talking about spiritual stuff. And he said, what I'm waiting for is to see who's receiving the message that I'm trying to talk about. When they start receiving the message, then I know that's the one God wants me to speak to. It's not like God says, hey, get on the airplane and I want you to talk to seat A1. You have to make some discernment. You have to follow him. We know he wants us to speak. We know he wants us to love people. We know he wants us to be kind to people. You don't even have to ask yourself, should I forgive this person or not? Yes, you should. So I think you're on target there, Michael, is that God speaks to us probably the most today through his word. Now, will he give us something that or edges us on to do something else? Yes, but it's not some new revelation. It's not some new spiritual thing that the whole church has to know about. It's more of guidance and direction in your life.
I think it's got more to do with him. Well, if you're soaking up, if you're hearing it, you're talking about it, you're reading it, then when these things happen out in your world, you can see. I always use the word aware. I like the word aware because a lot of Christianity, to me, my own faith, is when I am aware of what he's already told me through his scripture or through talking to other people. He's already told me, but I get to see it kind of in reality in certain situations. Then I'm aware of, you know what, that's right. To me, that's him talking to me indirectly. I'm afraid of him talking to me directly because I think that's the end. When he, when you, that's another thing. I'm wondering if somebody that says that, do you realize what you're saying right there? Because,
well, I mean, like even when Neil's trying to select songs for worship, or I'm trying to figure out what to preach on, I have a general idea of what I'm thinking, but a lot of times I may have 2 or 3 or 10 ideas in my brain, and I find myself coming back to one. And it's not, saying like, oh, well, that was just your favorite one. No, a lot of times it's the one I wanted to do the least. Mm-hmm. But I keep coming back to this. There's a word or there's a phrase or there's a sentence in the scripture that I just keep coming back to. And I feel like that's God leading me to that.
So the trick here that trips people up seems to be discerning.
Yes.
Oh, hey, there's a buzzable word right there. Seems to be discerning when it's something he is trying to communicate to you or whether it's something you're just thinking up on your own. I have good news, I think, for people. I think he may be stirring that thought up in you. You know, there's a great thing in the Bible that I love about Paul heading off on a missionary trip, and while he's on it, realizing, oops, this is not right.
Yep.
And he went back. To me, that's gold, because that gives me an out, so to speak, for all the stupid things I've done over the years that I thought, this God wants me to do this. And then I get started and I'm going like, maybe that was just me. But the things I found that maybe he puts in my mind, that I spend a little time, let it marinate. And then nowadays when I have those thoughts, and I have a lot of thoughts, but nowadays when I have one, I don't immediately act on them anymore. I let them marinate, and in my calculations in my head, it's turned into, if this continues to unfold and works without me pressuring it, without me cooking stuff up, then I believe that maybe he does approve of that. And I still don't know. I can be honest and say I still don't know sometimes if he told me that. But I do know this. The more I think about him, the more I think he puts his thoughts in my mind and allows me to discover that at some point. And the ones that he seems to approve. Take this podcast right here, for example. I think it's one of those times where I had thought about it a long time but didn't do anything. But then when it seemed right, I started doing it, and it has unfolded itself pretty well. Just in spite of me, I'm capable of really screwing things up. But in spite of me, it's kind of done its thing.
Well, and when you came to me and started talking, I smiled because my wife had already said to me, she goes, do you remember a couple of years ago when we did the He Reads, She Reads Truth series? I was like, yeah. She goes, one of the things I really enjoyed, there was a podcast that went along with that. She said, I wish we could do something like that. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, that sounds great, but there's a lot of that I don't know how to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, this technical side of it, I could have figured it out. Obviously, if you could figure it out, I could figure it out.
Obviously.
But I didn't have that expertise nor time nor even desire. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you said that, I just kind of smiled, and I'm like, okay, all right, maybe God's doing something here, you know?
I remember that conversation.
Yeah.
It was so, I don't really think that was an irony. I think maybe he was speaking to all of us at the time and bringing all these thoughts together.
Yep.
You know, had any of us here at this table waited for him to audibly say, do this,
yeah,
we still wouldn't be doing it. Or if we had said, you know, if you want me to do this, then cause that chair to roll across the floor on its own, then I'll know.
Yep.
I think we had to do what Paul did.
Yep.
You know, and when this started, we did it wrong a few times till we kind of worked some things out. But anyway, yeah.
So when I ask you about define speak,
yes,
how God speaks to you, you did exactly what I was hoping you'd do. Because to me, that's one of the best reasons to keep your face in the Word of God, in the Bible. Keep in that all the time, because the more you do that, the more you recognize Him, how He interacts with people. I mean, that's what the Bible is. It's the story of, well, first of all, the big story is Him wanting to be with His creation, and that's going to happen. But the middle level of that is, how does He interact with, you know, all of the characters, even Moses and all the people in the Bible. And it's not about those characters, it's about God. Mm-hmm. And it defines who He is and who His character is. And so the more you're in this, the more you're reading, I didn't mean it, the more you're in the Word. Mm-hmm. That's a buzzer thing, I think. Yeah. The more you read this, the more you'll know, and you don't have to think as hard about, is that what God wants me to do?
Yeah.
And then the other thing to think about too is, surely you've had those experiences where you're reading a passage that you know really well. I know this, I've got it memorized, and you read it and it's completely different. It speaks to you in a very different way, which is why it's called the living Word. It speaks at the time it needs to. It's God doing that and delivering the message that way, I guess. And I also don't think God's never going to tell you to do something that contradicts what's in here.
Right.
You know, He's not, it's like you're saying, He's not going to all of a sudden go, well, I guess you don't need to do that anymore.
But and the flip side and the beauty of that too is that you're free to do things. You're free to try things.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the little Paul story.
Yes.
So Paul, super Christian.
Wanted to go to Macedonia,
Yeah.
but the Spirit prevented me from going.
Yes. So you have the freedom. So I would encourage anybody that might be hearing all this and who is in that mode sometimes of just driving yourself nuts because you don't know what he wants you to do, and you're waiting to hear from him. Just do something. Do something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, within reason, but do something because Paul did it. If Paul can do it, I can do it. You can do it. We can all do it. But if you sit, I really do think if you sit back and wait to hear or for one of these fancy signs, if you sit back and wait, you're going to be waiting the rest of your life. You're going to die unsatisfied, not ever having participated in this really, really beautiful life flow. There's a flow going all the time. You can step in it and be involved in it, or you can stand over to the side waiting on some magical spot to appear or the right sign or something. You step in there and do something. Mm-hmm. Just do something.
Yeah, there's a reality that sometimes life is mundane. Moses was herding sheep for 40 years.
That's mundane. I'm just going to say.
40 years,
mundane.
Right? Same activity, season after season after season. And we don't hear that God was speaking to him in those moments. We also have to realize, too, that with characters like Moses, well, number one, he's called the Old Testament deliverer, so it was a big job that God was calling him to do, and there was no written word. Moses is the writer of the first 5 books of the Bible. So God had to speak to him in a profoundly direct and supernatural way, or Moses would have never gotten it, and we have a supernatural way. The Word is alive. It is our burning bush. It is God speaking directly to us. Now, are we going to listen? Are we going to participate? But again, the whole conversation piece is God wants to use people, and He uses somebody like Moses, who's broken. He's not a perfect man. He's committed murder. He's run away. When the burning bush is there, he comes up with excuses. In the midst of coming back to Egypt, he makes several mistakes. Even taking them out of Egypt, makes several mistakes. So much so, at the end of his ministry, he makes a mistake, doesn't get to go into the promised land. Mm-hmm. So he's not a perfect person. And I think that's kind of what I want to kind of end this section of what we're talking about is that, not only our lives, but we've seen other people that weren't perfect, and yet God has done some really cool things with them. So, I want y'all to share maybe somebody that God has done something really cool with. I'll share about a friend of mine. So a friend of mine named Peter Rosenberger, him and his wife have been married now for almost 30 years. She's a double amputee. Just a train wreck, to be honest. I mean, their marriage has been up and down, up and down. You can imagine I think she's had 80 some odd surgeries, a lot of pain, a lot of time in hospitals. And yet, through all of their journey, she has been able to stand on the stage with the President of the United States and sing on false legs and sing. Peter has now been able to do a ministry for caregivers, because he's been a full-time caregiver. His whole married career, he's been a caregiver. And they've had some really rough spots in their marriage. They've had rough spots in their life. They've been down and out a few times. But to hear their testimony and to hear what God's done with them is absolutely amazing. And it's just a reminder to us that, God wants to use all of us. It's just, again, that point of bringing it back to Him and letting Him be in charge. So y'all share some of your stories, some of your heroes.
Well, there's a couple people I'm thinking of that would not want their names pointed out and their situations pointed out. But I can say that a couple of people I'm thinking about have been through some really extreme difficulties on personal levels and what they've gone through. But looking at their lives, I think about the number of people that talked about their situation over the years and how their faith stayed intact, and how, as an example to people, without trying to be, and thinking that they were not that at all, but then down the road, looking at their life and the number of people that were either encouraged or changed in some ways because of what they witnessed those people doing, is kind of incredible to me, because there's 8 billion people on the planet. Loosen up a little bit. God's got to talk to all of them. If he's not saying something to you right now, just consider that he might be talking to somebody else. He might be talking to you guys across the table. Who am I to whine about his attention to me 24 hours a day when there's all these other people and they're all his, et cetera, et cetera. The only other person I would point to is my granddad. I talk about him a lot. Very unassuming man, very kind. You won't find a human being on the planet that says anything other about him than being such a kind, humble, good human being. He was a devout Christian man. Enough said.
Yep.
I mean, enough said. He was never on TV. He sold old used cars to people. But without exception, it's a good word that followed his life everywhere, and is still talked about today. So,
and I've got a number of folks that I can think of, but like you, I'm not going to name anybody, but I think about a particular couple that I've watched since I've known them. I've watched them set an example by being probably some of the most humble people and not trying to push. But they do that thing I always talk about, God giving you 2 ears and 1 mouth.
mm-hmm.
And they do that better than just about anybody I know, and I can trace. I did a thing a long time ago. I thought it was goofy at the time, but I did it anyway. I went backward in my relationships, and I went, okay, here's H.D. Jones, who's now a friend, who I didn't know 8 years ago. Didn't know him 7 years ago. How did I meet him? Who was involved in me meeting him? Oh, that was so-and-so. Well, now where did I meet that person? And you go backward through all of that, and if you start looking at the relationships between people, I've seen more and more folks that when they are sold out to God, that's a phrase.
Yeah, no, buzz it though. Too serious a moment.
When they are completely, when they recognize that their relationship with the Lord is not just Sunday morning or Wednesday night, and then they stuff it away until Sunday morning again, but that it's an integral part of who you are as a believer. It's a daily, ongoing thing to keep that relationship going. But you don't have to push a lot of times. I keep thinking back about, too, sometimes people have preconceived ideas about what it is to have God talk to you, have him speak to you. And all I can say is it comes from a desire. It's not a legalistic thing. And I think a lot of times people approach I've got to do my Bible study for half an hour a day or 15 minutes or whatever. I've got to put in that time. No, you don't got to. You need to do it because you want to. You want that relationship with Jesus Christ to where you recognize when he's nudging you. You know, I think you could use that word.
I think you could use that, yeah.
Encouraging you or discouraging you from things. And I know all of those things. I've experienced nudging and discouraging and all of that stuff. So
you just become more aware of when maybe he's nudging you. I would say this about that. If you are hearing us talk about this and you're not involved in Christianity, you've never been saved, consider the fact that this topic about God talking to you, if you're considering it right now, I suspect he's nudging you.
Yep.
I don't think
Absolutely.
it's anything we might be doing.
Right.
I don't think it's anything you might even be doing, but I think he might be. Just consider that. What if that was the creator of the universe paying attention to you while I'm over here whining about him not talking to me? What if that's him speaking to you right now and just kind of nudging you, saying, give it a try, as we say here once in a while. What if?
Yep.
Anyway,
Very good.
good little talk right here.
Yep.
I'm all pumped up.
We're here to pump
We
you
are here
up.
to pump you up. We'll be back. Play Inny or Outty. Stay with us. It's going to be interesting.
Hey everybody, it's time to play America's almost favoriteest new game show, Inny or Outty, where we challenge our guests to figure out if a phrase we give them is actually in the Bible or out of the Bible. Sharpen your wits, guest. You're about to be in the hot seat of Bible stuff, because you're the next contestant on Inny or Outty. Here's Mike.
Fun.
Educational.
What a great word. Fun-ucational. Shrinkle.
I mean, you can just learn some things here.
Abable.
Abable.
What was the other one? Well, no, that was just hillbilly slang, that other one. Anyway, yes, fun-ucational. We're going right to it. Neil and I are both in the power seats. We have the golden opportunity to embarrass our church's pastor right here in front of everybody.
There you go.
And we're going to do the best we can to make it happen. Because we know you can take it.
I can.
That's what I like about you. You can take it. It's a good thing.
Right?
I'll start. Inny or Outty? There were more than 2 tablets that Moses had. More than 2 stone tablets that Moses had. Inny or Outty? Is that an Inny or is that an Outty?
More than 2 stone tablets.
Yes.
I bring you these 15, 10
Yes.
commandments. Yeah.
And then somebody said, edit them down to 2.
According to Mel Brooks. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. So this Inny or Outty, there were more than 2 stone tablets talked about in the scriptures of old.
I learned that, and you may have said this in a message recently too.
You're just getting far away from the mic.
Sorry. Mike who? Mike the Baptist. That the idea that there would be, whenever there was a covenant, there would be a duplicate of the covenant. Mm-hmm. And so the theologians that we were learning about had suggested that they weren't, this wasn't 1 through 5 and this wasn't 6 through 10, but that was all 10 on each one of them, because there's a copy for each person that's in the covenant, the 2 parties that are in there. So I don't know.
But that was still 2 stone tablets.
Right.
The only thing he might be trying to trickle us with.
Trickle, that's a new word too.
No, that's an actual word though.
It is? Yeah. Oh, yes, it is. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Trickle. It is. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Carry on. He's right.
Did I say something wrong?
No.
What does it
Never.
mean? Is that he broke the first 2 stones tablets, and then God had to do them again. So I think there were only 2 original tablets, but then he broke them, and God had to recast the stone.
So if the theory about having all 10 commandments on each one, he would have had to remake 2 of them, which would have made 4, not 3.
This is interesting.
This is making my head hurt.
No, it's interesting. I really like it. I like the way it's going.
This is making my head hurt. So what's our answer, Neil?
I think it's 2, but
Yeah, I think it's 2 tablets. But again, the caveat is if you're saying, well, no, 2 of them got broken, then he made 2 more.
Yeah, the question was only
Only 2.
There were more than 2 tablets referenced in the scriptures. Is that an Inny or Outty? That
Yes,
there were more?
there's more than 2 referenced. So if that's the way we're
Playing it.
yeah,
So you're going with that's an Inny?
that's an Inny. Yes, Michael. That's
You're
an
exactly right, and I was happy. And I was going to stop you before you talked about Inny. No, you're exactly right because yes, there were 2 originally, and that's a little known fact about that. And they were Moses himself broke them all up, busted them all up, didn't he? Because he was mad, I guess. He
Threw him at that golden calf.
threw a little fit and busted them all up. And how would you like to have to go back to God and say,
Oops.
I accidentally broke your first 2 tablets?
The dog ate my homework.
Yeah, that would be not a good feeling. Congratulations, we have a win. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah.
Had a good solid win right there.
No, y'all got maple tree.
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah, we
Yeah,
did. Yes, congratulations.
It's
us.
been a few weeks for me. So.
Okay, so we're 1 for 1 today.
Yes.
And now Neil is in the power seat, and
Ooh.
HD and I have a opportunity to
Sweep it.
Yep. Under
In the
You'll get it.
Okay.
It's another phrase.
Okay.
It's
Well, I
another
like phrases, yeah.
speaking instead of individual words,
Mhm.
because I like that.
Yep.
Because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living God, who hath created the heaven and the earth, and hath sovereignty over all flesh.
One more time, if you don't care, like they do in the spelling bees.
Can you use that in a
Can you
sentence?
use that? Can you use it in phrase?
Can you give the reference, please?
Because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living God, who hath created the heaven and the earth, and hath sovereignty over all them.
Sounds pretty biblical to me, just off the cuff. It doesn't sound as theatrical as, sometimes these phrases have a little theater in them. But this one sounds pretty solid. And the fact that he started with because instead of, I'm just making stuff up here.
So, does that sound like something Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would have said when they were supposed to bow down and worship the golden statue?
That wasn't exactly what I was thinking, but
Well, what was you exactly thinking?
I was just thinking it didn't sound, odd.
I'm trying to think of characters.
I said Shadrach, Meshach, and a billy goat at a church play one time when I was a kid and got in trouble for it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
No, I was just thinking that he started the phrase because such and such instead of, I think if he were trying to trick us, he wouldn't have started with the word because. That's what makes me feel like it's kind of authentic. I'm looking for any hint of y'all saying, yeah, it's kind of smart there.
That's
Okay,
That's
okay,
smart.
good.
That's really intuitive.
Well, now, yours was even more intuitive because you brought up actual references. To
Well,
things.
I'm trying to think, who was made to worship other gods, and they refused. That was just the one that popped in my mind. I'm sure there's others.
Let's have him read it one more time. Can you mind reading it one
No,
more
I
time?
don't mind.
We're listening for some nuances now.
Fast here. Because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living God, who hath created the heaven and the earth, and hath sovereignty over all flesh.
I think it's an NEH. It just sounds
it
right.
it's good theology, whether it's in there or not.
Well, and what you just brought up,
It's good.
it's good like supportive evidence that's...
Yeah, let's go with Inny. I'm good. I'm
Neil,
good
we
with that.
believe that's an Inny.
You remember last week when I told you what the youth pastor I worked with and I used to open the
Yes,
large Bible, the Apocrypha, and the stuff?
the dragon.
Yeah, that is from Bell and the Dragon.
Bell and the
That's
Dragon.
Chapter
See,
1.
We did it, eh?
Yeah,
We did it.
yeah. It does sound good though.
Oh, it sounded really good.
It does.
So that's not even in the...
It's in the Apocrypha.
Okay, so it is one of those old books.
And the book is called Bell and the Dragon.
Bell, that would have tipped me off right off the, at the canon meetings. Should we include Bell and the Dragon in there?
Wow.
Yeah,
But that's
but
why we
now
got
if we do
fooled.
that, we got to put the Fox and the Hound in there too.
That's why we got fooled though, because it's scriptural sounding.
It was the language.
It's scriptural sounding.
So the people who wrote those other books,
There's some of them heretics.
is that why the language, I guess, would have been so similar? Is because they
Yeah,
were all
They're
kinda-
within the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
were any of the actual scribe people write some of those and then they got booted later? That they accepted the good ones and booted some of their, or was it different people that wrote the books of the
most
Apocrypha?
of the apocryphal writing is between the Old Testament and New Testament. So that 400 years.
So it's a completely different set of people.
That's where most of that comes from, if I remember correctly.
Gotcha. That makes sense then.
But when you read your English Bible, if it has like brackets, some of our verses will have brackets
at the end.
And basically, what they're trying to tell you is that that's not in all of the manuscripts.
Right.
So it doesn't mean it's not scriptural, not worth being in there, but it's just not in all of the manuscripts.
Right.
Or it's not. Sometimes they say it's not in the original
text that was written, or
what's the word for it?
Codex.
Yes, it's not in the oldest ones that they have.
Yeah.
So they question.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but it's not that it's not valid truth. It's just not part of the.
But it was weighted as important enough to include, even though it was.
And some of it, and we need to say this because again, there's maybe some folks here listening that aren't believers, and they're going, "Oh, that just proves the Bible's not real." Mm-hmm. If you take all of those things that are bracketed and you pulled them out and put them on a sheet of paper, it wouldn't change one thing about who Jesus said he was, what he did, and that kind of stuff. For example, in the Lord's Prayer, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, that last phrase, for thine is the kingdom and the power forever. Amen. That's in brackets. So it doesn't change the rest of the prayer, but they don't find that phrase in some of the manuscripts. So they're just trying to be authentic with us.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing. Right.
Not a bad thing.
Right.
Funnucational.
Yep. Funnucational.
Always.
Bell and the Dragon.
One win, one loss. We came through, didn't we?
I know. Ta-da.
Still good.
Yep.
Okay, we'll be back. Good round. Good round.
Oh, wow. What a great contestant and a fine sport today on Inny or Outty, America's almost favorite new game show. Study up, future guest people. You're next in the hot seat for Inny or Outty.
I'm still a little sad that we lost. But I've come to be used to it.
We lose so that others may win.
Oh, that's good right there. Did you hear that? Say that again.
We lose so that others may win.
I feel better about myself already. You too. I feel better about you now too.
Powerful.
Hey, we feel good about all of you all who might have tuned in to listen and stayed this far. So thanks for being with us. Always enjoy visiting with you and talking about all this stuff. And good things usually come out of these talks. Sometimes you have to pick and choose a little bit, but there's usually always something in there. Nuggets, I think is what we talked about last week. There's always a nugget or two in there. So anyway, my son bought a bunch of pickle juice, and he's going to soak some chicken in it and try to duplicate the Chick-fil-A chicken.
Yes. Yeah.
I just thought I'd share that with you. I just thought about that when we were talking about nuggets there. Thanks, HD, for being here today and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. And you as well, Neil, being labeled as the smartest at the table. We were happy to have your knowledge here. And you too, you and your knowledge.
Thank you.
Thanks for both of you for showing
Showing
up.
up at the
Sometimes
same time.
they don't bring it. Yeah.
Well, it happens. I bring that every week. Not much. But anyway, so thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time. Remember, we're all just Christians.
All right.
Not too.
Cuss. Curse if you're from the city. See you next time.
Mike the Baptist.